ID clip. I abused the hell out of this cheat code when I played Doom as a kid in the mid-90s. Screw searching for keycards and remembering map layouts, I just wanted to shoot things, and the ability to run through walls helped me achieve this goal in the easiest manner. But ID clip didn't just allow me to pass through barriers, it allowed me to leave the map entirely, and I would often find myself in no man's land, requiring the guidance of the minimap to bring me back home. The way the textures on screen become distorted when out of bounds is oddly nostalgic. These warped images are unmistakable for the Doom engine. The void is dark and barren, a place few men have ventured without the aid of cheat codes. Doom's boundaries are surprisingly hard to crack, something that can't be said for many of the more modern first-person shooters. As difficult as it may be though, it is indeed possible to escape Doom's walls if you have the knowledge and a bit of luck. It's understandable to assume that once beyond a level's limits, finishing would be as easy as running to the end. There's just one problem. As hard as it is to get into the void, it's even harder to return. The conditions required for these glitches to result in anything useful is exceedingly rare, so much so that their use in speedruns is a relatively recent occurrence. We've covered some pretty old records in previous videos, going all the way back to the mid-90s. When it comes to going out of bounds, however, Doom speedrunning saw nothing until almost 17 years after the game's release. It's still used rather sparingly, on display in only 2 of Doom's 36 levels. In this video, we will explore how the act of warping out of bounds has shaped the history of these 2 levels. These runs are honestly really interesting, and it's pretty cool how 25 years after release, runners are still finding new strategies in Doom. In fact, while researching for this very video, a new strategy was found that allowed runners to smash the existing record on one of these 2 stages. So sit back and relax as we examine Doom's most precise strategy and glide our way into the void. Without the use of cheats, escaping Doom's walls is something that very few people have been able to achieve. Even in the speedrunning scene, where players were spending countless hours pushing the game to its limits, the amount of documented cases of this happening were extremely rare. Up until relatively recently, the only documented cases of players venturing out of bounds occurred when an extremely rare glitch was triggered called the All Ghosts effect. The All Ghosts effect causes the player and all mobs to have clipping disabled, allowing everything to move through walls. This sounds pretty promising, as with this new ability one could simply run immediately to the exit. Unfortunately, this glitch also stops you from being able to activate switches, so you're unable to press the end button to finish the level. This essentially renders the glitch completely useless. The earliest instance I could find of a player legitimately passing into the void without the use of the All Ghosts effect glitch was in 2006. The member Vegeta's Wrath posted a topic on the Doomworld forum titled Ultimate Doom Trick. He outlined that he had been repulsed back by a monster and clipped through the wall, ending up near the exit switch. The level in question was Episode 2, Map 2, Halls of the Damned. The world record for completing this stage on Ultraviolent was 1 minute and 12 seconds at the time, and was one of the longest levels in Doom speedrunning. The exit room is blocked by 3 keycard doors, and the process of scouring the entire level for these keycards was a pretty lengthy one. It just so happened that the place Vegeta clipped out of bounds from did not require any keycards to access, so hypothetically, if you could get straight to the end from here, it would eliminate the need to get any keycards at all. In the attached picture, you could see that he had been backed up into a corner before going out of bounds. Players didn't know this at the time, but this specific geometry is really important and has special properties that will allow Doomguy to pass through. As mentioned in his post, Vegeta ended up near the exit switch, but evidently couldn't find any way to actually activate it. It was already known back then, and it still holds true today. Once you enter the void, it is impossible to return. It didn't seem possible to hit the switch from out of bounds either, so nothing really came from this trick. Players tested at that same location and were able to replicate the glitch easy enough, which would go on to be called a void glide. It was an interesting oddity for sure, but nothing useful for speedrunning. Void glides aren't free by any means either, and it can often take many runs before you nail an attempt first try. When I was learning the trick for this video, I got shamefully annoyed because I went hours without getting it to work a single time, even though I had tutorials at my disposal and people telling me what to do. The explanation I'm about to give you on why void glides work is extremely oversimplified, and if you want to know the specific details, I will put a link in the description to a more technical one. When Doomguy makes contact with a wall, the game attempts to calculate how to redirect his current momentum along the axis of the wall. The formula the game uses to make this calculation is workable, but not entirely precise. This slight error also just happens to always result in a value that is slightly greater than what it should be. Usually, this has no impact on how the game plays. But in very precise locations and with the correct angle, a positive feedback loop can be created by bouncing Doomguy off two walls simultaneously. The same mechanic that makes wall running possible further increases the player's momentum, until its value per frame is greater than Doomguy's diameter. At this point, the game will predict Doomguy's location on the next frame, based on his speed, which would be on the other side of the wall. Given that once beyond the wall, there are no further obstructions, he will be placed into the void. Getting through walls, doors, and obstacles by increasing speed is used in so many different games that it feels almost redundant to explain why it works, so I won't go into too much detail. Some games will check to see if there are any obstacles between you and the place the game wants to put you, but Doom isn't one of them. As long as your speed is high enough to bypass an obstacle in a single frame, you'll be able to do it. Void glides are precise. So much so that even with the exact same setup, it can still take a while to execute one successfully. The level of precision that is required is so high that it is beyond what a human could perceive, let alone recreate perfectly. It's not too dissimilar to the depot warp in GoldenEye. We can understand it on a theoretical level, and a computer can be programmed to pull it off every time, but when it comes to performing the trick in a real-life setting, it all basically comes down to repeatedly running into a wall until it magically lets you through. When the level of precision gets to a certain point, it ultimately becomes luck. Several years later in 2010, there was a lengthy forum post by the user Crayfus, outlining the differences between certain types of glides. I won't cover the entire post, but the important thing about this post was the mention of what he called wobble glides. Momentum in Doom works very similar to how it does in real life. Accelerating from a standstill takes time, and your speed is tied directly to how fast you are moving through space. This is different to a game such as GoldenEye, where your speed is tracked irrespective of how far you are actually moving. This is why GoldenEye players can build speed while running against a wall. Doom players can't do this, which is why they will back up when opening doors to build up speed through movement. But it's possible to trick Doom's engine into believing that you have momentum, even though you're not actually moving. This trick is called momentum preservation. An example of this is the corner we use on E2M6 to warp into the void. Even though the glide itself does not happen that often, much of the time Doomguy will wobble around while running into the corner. This wobble is different to how Doomguy should normally behave when running into a wall, and is an indication that the game believes he has momentum, even though he actually doesn't. The post on wobble glides re-sparked interest into the void glide that had been previously done on E2M6. The reason for this is that they appear to be very similar, and most of the time when you miss the void glide, you end up getting a wobble, so they seemed to be connected. A couple of the newer Doom World members discussed recreating the void glide as had been seen years earlier. The member Cack-Handed would break the level open when he would post this demo. Cack-Handed had shown that there was no need to re-enter the map to finish the level. You could do it from the outside. So this brings up the obvious question. If it was so simple, why hadn't anyone done it before? If it was as simple as standing next to the button and activating it, why didn't anyone try that? The problem is that the exact angle and position you need in order to actually hit the button is so minute that in all of the previous attempts, no one had successfully hit it. It is incredibly specific, and if you don't know what you need to look out for, it's certainly possible that you may never find that specific angle. People simply moved on after trying and deemed it impossible. Even though I knew that it was possible, and I had seen videos of people doing it, it still took me 20 minutes of trying to hit it for the first time. Sure, through practice and experience you can get better at it, but if you had no idea where or how to do it, and you didn't even know it was possible, you could spend hours here and achieve nothing. It may have been blind luck that allowed it to be found in the first place. On Cackhanded's run of 57 seconds, he killed the monsters around the Void Glide area before attempting the glide. This is so that he had time to attempt the glide a few times without being interrupted. But obviously, this took up some time. If you grinded the level sufficiently, you could ignore the monsters and go straight for the glide. The member Kebob did exactly that, and smashed the record with a run of 33 seconds the next day. 2 days later, he would achieve a 28. This run was pretty decent and would stay as the world record for 2 years. Here's something I have to mention though, and I've noticed it a few times. Some Doom players like to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and play levels as a pacifist and restrain from shooting monsters. This is so that they can get the world record in both the ultra-violent speed category and also the pacifist category with the same run. Kebob's runs were all done pacifist, and sometimes that does create a slight disadvantage. You can see how the guards can sometimes block his path, and he has to wait for them to move out of the way, or die. The player JC DORNE would not play the level as a pacifist, and would achieve a run of 24 seconds in 2012. The interesting thing about this run is that he did the Void Glide backwards. It doesn't seem to provide any benefits one way or the other, but it definitely looks cool. The run was clean, and it would remain the record for almost 7 years. Even though the concept of void glides had been known about for years, they still couldn't be implemented on other levels. The ingredients that make this trick viable are pretty specific and rarely found in Doom. Firstly, this can't be done on just any corner. Any corner that has axis-aligned walls are completely ruled out, and this eliminates the vast majority of corners. Secondly, the corner almost always needs to be facing east. This is so that the mechanic that allows for wall running can be used, which, as I mentioned in my previous Doom video, is usually only possible traveling north or east. Thirdly, it's impossible to re-enter the map. This means that the exit button must be both reachable and you need to be able to actually press the button from the void. Both of these factors are rare as hell, so as you can see, it's probably a miracle that this glitch was even useful on any Doom maps to begin with. As fate would have it though, in 2015 a second level was about to be broken. On the 2nd of March, the user KPA6 posted this really weird demo of him accidentally executing a void glide. The interesting thing about this glide was that it didn't appear to use a corner, and it wasn't immediately obvious what had happened. What they soon realized was that in order to execute a void glide, you don't actually need 2 walls. In KPA6's demo, an imp had created an artificial barrier. This simulated the exact geometry required to create the same feedback loop that had been used in E2M6. Armed with this new knowledge, players began scouring every level to find any place this could be applied to. The speedrunner Looper would find one, and the level was E1M8. E1M8 is the final level in the first episode of Doom. The intended way to complete the level is to defeat 2 Barons of Hell that serve as the episode's boss fight. Once the boss has been defeated, the outer walls lower, allowing access to a teleportal that sends Doomguy to the final room. Once in this room, Doomguy is unavoidably damaged until the point of death. Once dead, the level is completed. Before 2015, the record stood at 46 seconds set by SEDLO in 2004. On the 4th of March 2015, JC DORNE completed this run. Triggering the end on E1M8 is really easy. The sector that causes damage and ends the level extends out from the final room to the edge of the map, so you only need to cross the invisible line to trigger the end. You'll notice that JC uses the barrels to damage himself before the glide. This is so that he has less health and ultimately dies quicker at the end. A year and 6 months later, Forest Shock Blast would optimize the level further, achieving this run. "19 seconds is where the record remains today. In September of 2019, one of the Doom speedrunners known as DEPRAVITY knew I was researching E2M6 for this video, and decided to try and beat the record before the video came out. On the 21st of September he was successful in this goal, and managed to complete a run of 23 seconds. For the strategy he used, this run is really good. But unfortunately for him, on the very same day a brand new strategy would be unearthed. The legendary Doom speedrunner Zero Master was about to drop this bombshell. Zero Master had found a different way to void glide, taking advantage of a corner that was closer to the starting position. This is not your standard glide, and the only way to get out of the map here is to use a damage boost from the rocket launcher to get enough speed to pass through the wall. There are 2 steps for this new glide. First, he lines up a specific angle and backs up into the corner, achieving a wobble. Once again, this wobble is confirmation Doom Guy's momentum is being preserved. Then, while still wobbling, he lines up another very specific angle and shoots the rocket launcher into the wall several meters ahead. This provides just enough speed to get into the void. 2 days later, DEPRAVITY was able to use the new strategy to achieve a run of 16 seconds. 2 days after that, on the 25th of September, JC DORNE stole back the record with this run. And this is where the record remains today. Who knows what lies in store for this bizarre strategy? Considering the fact that Doom has been out for almost 26 years, it's shocking that these new strategies are still being discovered. It really is impossible to say what lies ahead. For today's video challenge, I achieved a time of 1 minute and 1 second on E2M6 on the ultra violence difficulty setting. I'm pretty happy about this time, and I think people are going to have a lot more trouble beating this one than my previous challenge. If you can beat this, I'll put your name in the next video, and I will select a run at random to play. In order to enter, post a video or demo in my Discord channel. Congratulations to the heroes on screen for beating my previous challenge of 25 seconds on Quake's E1M1. It was interesting to see the different types of bunny hopping and different strategies people used, and it was great to see a few new people give Quake a try. A massive thank you to the people supporting me on Patreon. It really means a lot. Thanks for watching, you absolute legends. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.